Hello, Year 10. We're looking at a new poem this week. It's called Extract from the Prelude by William Wordsworth. I think there's good news. I think the video camera's not working. I don't know whether you can see me. I think it's not. Okay, this is William Wordsworth here. He was born in 1770 in Cumbria, which is the northwest of England, what we'd call the Lake District now. There's a picture of him waving to his sister Dorothy. So he was born in 1770. He was one of 5 children born in Cumbria. Sadly, his parents died before he was 15. So as a result of that, he was cared for relatives, so he had to move around quite a bit. He moved to Dorset in the south of England and Somerset, which is the county next to Dorset. But he was always brought up in the countryside and therefore always had an interest in nature. And when he was a bit older, he moved back to Cumbria, which is where he was born. And obviously that continued his interest in nature. So down to that interest in nature, looking at this picture here, this is the Lake District. So I don't know whether you've ever been, but it's an area of England where I think we have the highest mountains in England and also lots and lots of lakes. It's very popular with tourists, but it's quite it's unpopulated and it's quite a wild area. It gets lots of rain, it gets lots of extreme weather. So this is the place he made home, and he is associated with this area. He wrote loads of poems based around this area. He enjoyed walking around the area. And he moved back there in 1813. He was the poet laureate, which I guess you could say is the most important, makes him the most important poet of the time in England. The poet laureate then was appointed by the king, now is appointed by the government, and this is the poet who kind of writes poems for special occasions, wars, royal marriages, royal anniversaries, that sort of thing. So he is the most recognised and important poet in the country at that time. Down here we have a picture of the French Revolution. So you might remember that we said many of the Romantics were inspired by the French Revolution. Remember, the Romantic poets were a group of poets and writers who shared similar beliefs and wrote at the same time. And one of these beliefs was that people should be free and are trapped by government, trapped by royalty. Basically, people should be free to think what they want, to feel what they want, and things like laws and private land all prevent people from being free. So Wordsworth, there's another one. He went on a walking tour to Switzerland and France around the time of the French, well, just after the French Revolution, and he was impressed by what he saw. He took his views back with him to England, and at the time believed that the people overthrowing royalty was the right thing to do. Later on in his life, his views changed, and he became much more what we would call much more conservative. So his views, he stopped believing in things like rebellion, and he started believing in things like government and royalty, and was criticised by many of the other Romantic poets because of this. And up there we have a picture of the Romantic poets. We won't go through them all now. But here's one of cursor. Where's the cursor? Here's one of William Blake, whose poem we will be looking at next. Okay, so remember the Romantic poets generally had an affiliation with nature. They believed in nature. They had an appreciation of wilderness. Remember, you might not know, but at this time in British history, the wild areas of England were largely undiscovered, and people were suspicious of them. They didn't know what existed in these areas. Nowadays, the Lake District is the most visited place in the country. People go and walking holidays there, camping holidays there. During the summer months, apart from this year, it's absolutely packed. But in those days, people didn't really visit these areas. They were suspicious of them or scared of them. They had a view of nature as being something threatening. And to a certain extent, it's the romantic poets that are responsible for changing that view and also introducing the idea of tourism, that you could go to these areas and see and appreciate their beauty. And that's really important in order to understand this poem, the idea that romantics had about nature. And it's kind of summarized by a philosopher called Edmund Burke, who had something called the theory of the sublime. And he believed that nature was the thing most capable of causing the strongest emotions in human beings. So nature could cause more powerful emotions than love, fear, death, jealousy, all of those things. So nature was the thing that provoked the strongest emotions in human beings. It could change the way people saw the world. It could change the way people felt. And that this poem will seem a bit strange if you can't get your head around that idea, that nature can be that powerful. Okay. 3 questions, please, so far. If you could, I'll read out the questions if you want to pause and answer them, or you can go back and search for the answer. And as usual, just write down your answers or email them to me. So when was William Wordsworth born, please? Number 1, if you want to pause and write that down. Number 2, which area of England did Wordsworth spend most of his life in? Which area of England is he most associated with? And number 3, what was Edmund Burke's theory of the sublime? What did he believe? Okay, on to the poem itself now. Now, an important thing to say is that this is just one bit of a huge poem, thousands and thousands of words. Wordsworth spent his whole life from about the age of 30 writing this poem, which is why it's so big, and it's autobiographical. It tells the story of his life. In fact, he was encouraged to write it by another poet, another romantic poet, Coleridge, and in fact Wordsworth never actually finished the poem, and it was only published after his death. Named the Prelude. In his lifetime, he just called it the poem. So he was constantly working on this poem throughout his whole life. So what we're looking at here is just a really, really small part of the poem, an extract, which is why it's called Extract from the Prelude. It would be tricky for you to study the whole 3,000 word poem. So it starts off like a story. One summer evening. So we are in summer here, which is always associated with kind of the most beautiful natural time of the year. One summer evening, and in brackets, led by her. Led by her, he means nature. I was led by nature. So he is personifying nature. So straight away on the last slide, remember I said you've got to bear in mind with this poem that Wordsworth, and like many of the romantic poets, believed nature was that powerful. And he shows that power by personifying nature here. So he is being led by nature. He is not choosing to go to this place. And this starts the idea that nature is more powerful than human beings, which is very much an idea that Wordsworth would have believed in. So one summer evening, he's out for a walk. I found a little boat tied to a willow tree. So he's walking by a river or a stream, and he finds a boat. So again here we kind of have a contrast throughout this poem between humans and nature, and really the poem is about, are human beings and nature in competition with each other, So are humans trying to overpower nature, or is nature more powerful than humans? Is it best that human beings and nature work together? They are both at their best when they work together. So here the difference between the boat represents human beings. It's them that create boats. It's them that rows the boats and directs the boats. And the willow tree is nature. It grows naturally. So straight away the difference between humans and nature is introduced here. The boat is tied to a willow tree within a rocky cove. So this is quite a wild place. Rocky, a cove is like a bay. Um, and sort of with cliffs surrounding it, its usual home. So the boat is personified as well. It has a home, so this is where the boat should be. And a cove is normally quite a sort of private and secretive place. So everything here is as it should be. He is wandering through nature and he finds a boat where it usually is. And then he does something really he shouldn't. Straight I unloosed her chain. So he unties the boat from the willow tree and gets into the boat and then pushes it out from the shore into the river, So this is him sort of taking control of nature now. He's doing something probably he shouldn't be. And he feels a bit guilty about it, which is shown on the next line. It was an act of stealth. So stealth is when you do something secretively and quietly and effectively, but something that you probably feels like you're getting away with something. And he says, and troubled pleasure as well. So here he introduces the idea he's doing something he's a bit guilty about, but secretly he's enjoying it as well. I don't know whether you lot are all too well behaved, but I know when I was a kid, we used to break into is the wrong word, but we used to sneak into the orchard in the vicarage to take, steal apples really. And it was a bit of a guilty secret. You knew you shouldn't be doing it. You knew you could be getting caught. But at the same time, it was a kind of excitement of doing something you shouldn't be doing. So it's the same thing here. He's taking the boat. It's not his. And he knows he shouldn't be doing it. But at the same time, he's getting a bit of a thrill from not breaking laws, but breaking the expectations of what he should and shouldn't do. Nor without the voice of mountain echoes did my boat move on. So the boat is making a noise as it goes through the water, and that noise, because he's surrounded by mountains on either side, the boat is making a noise, drawing attention to him and the fact that he's taken this boat. So again, this is a bit shows his guilt or his awareness that he is making a noise where there should be silence, where there should only be the noise of nature. Leaving behind her still on either side small circles glittering idly in the moon. So he's now rowing down the river, and the small circles are, if you imagine putting your hand in the water in a river, how it forms small circles that sort of go out. So he's got two oars, one on either side. If you've ever rowed a boat, you should know that. And the oars are making circles in the river as he rows. And those circles are glittering idly in the moon. So this is quite a peaceful, beautiful image. But again, he is leaving an impression on nature. He is rowing, and that rowing is breaking the surface of the water. So it's this idea again, is he working with nature or is he working against nature? He shouldn't be here doing this until, excuse me, until they melted all into one track. So these are the circles from the oars sort of disappearing as he rows down the river. But now, like one who rows, proud of his skill. So up to this point, it's been a bit. He's trying not to. He feels like he's sneakily taken the boat. He's trying. He's a bit worried that he could be discovered. He's trying not to draw attention to himself. But now the tone changes. he's now becoming a bit confident. He's proud of his rowing skills, and he's trying to reach a chosen point with an unswerving line. So before now it's been a bit guilty, a bit secretive, taking this boat. Where's the cursor? But now he is proud of his skill, which suggests a kind of arrogance, really. And he's now trying to get somewhere, so he's much more deliberate and purposeful, and he's going in a straight line as well. So whereas before he was kind of just getting in the boat, it was all kind of relaxed and not going anywhere particular. Now he's determined to get somewhere, but it doesn't tell us where. So he's reaching a chosen point, so he's seen somewhere he wants to get to, and with an unswerving line, he's heading straight to that point. And then here he tells us where he is heading towards. I fixed my view, so this is very determined now. He's seen somewhere where he wants to get to, upon the summit of a craggy ridge. The summit is the top, the craggy ridge is the mountain. So again, somewhere wild. So he's in the distance, he sees the top of a mountain, and that's where he wants to get to. So now he's full of purpose, as opposed to at the start feeling little bit guilty and a little bit ashamed of taking the boat. And far above, the horizon's utmost boundary. So the mountain is on the horizon. It's in the distance. Now this idea of the boundary is quite important. It suggests that Wordsworth has taken the boat and wants to discover the kind of extremes of nature. He wants to see the boundary. He wants to see beyond what he would normally see. So it's almost like he wants to see excuse me, it's almost like he wants to see something he shouldn't see. He's breaking the laws of nature. He wants to take control. He wants to see beyond what he should see. Far above was nothing but the stars and the grey sky. So it's just him in nature. Normally at this time, I guess lots of poets, when referring to the sky, would refer to the heavens, but there's no sort of religious language here. There's no heaven, it's just him, the stars and the sky, just him and nature. And the question is he competing against nature by trying to find that boundary, by taking the boat, by disturbing this beautiful summer scene? Or is he working with nature by trying to reach that boundary and maybe discover something for himself? She was an elfin pinnace. A pinnace is a small boat, and an elfin, elfin means elves. I don't know whether you've heard of elves, but they're like spirits, or magical supernatural spirits. So the boat is personified here as a sort of magic supernatural spirit. Lustily I dipped my oars into the silent lake. Lustily means with great energy. So kind of he's really taking control of the situation now. He's really rowing much harder in order to get to the mountains in the distance, which he wants to discover. I dipped my oars into the silent lake. The silent lake emphasizes the sort of quietness of nature, the stillness of nature, and by dipping his oars into the lake, he is breaking that silence of nature. He is him, a human being, is literally leaving a mark on nature by putting his oars into the lake. So it's this same idea: is he working with nature or is he working against nature? And as I rose upon the stroke, my boat went heaving through the water like a swan. Okay, that's a simile there, comparing the boat to moving through the water like a swan. So this simile kind of summarizes the contradiction in his mind. He wants to feel like a part of nature, like a swan. A swan moving through water is natural and graceful. But his boat goes heaving through the water. Heaving means with great strength, which obviously the great strength is him. He's rowing the boat, so he's not like a swan, gracious. He's got to put a lot of energy and a lot of effort into making the boat move that quickly. So although he wants to be natural like a swan, actually he's not. He's unnatural. He's purely reliant on his own power to move through the water. So this simile, again, but coming back to this contradiction, summarizes the contradiction in his head. Am I working with nature here, discovering nature, or am I disturbing nature, doing something I shouldn't be doing? Okay, 3 questions, please, on this first page of the poem. Sorry, I've changed my mind. It's 4 questions. Number 1, Wordsworth is out for a walk and he finds something. What does he find? Number 2, what does he do with the thing that he finds? Number 3, after a while, Wordsworth sees something and starts to aim for it, head towards it. What is it that he sees and starts to aim for? What is it he's trying to reach? And number 4, I mentioned several times the contradiction in this poem. Can you explain in your own words, please, what is that contradiction? Okay, that's all for the poem. There'll be spellings and quotes to follow. If you need any help at all with those questions, or if there's anything you want to know about the poem, just let me know. Otherwise, have a great week.